Hello, welcome to another episode of DecentraLounge, brought to you by Global Stake, your institutional SOC 2 Type 2 certified, truly decentralized, self-owned and managed bare metal staking service provider. Welcome to today's episode where we will discuss Ario, the first permanent cloud network built on top of the permaweb. Ario functions much like the normal web as we know and use it today. However, it is permanent, permissionless, and composable. It is also resilient, self-sovereign, and interoperable, with access provided by gateways that allow the seamless transmission of data both in and out of the permaweb. Joining us to discuss Ario today, we have Phil Mataras, founder and chief executive officer of PDS, or Permanent Data Solutions. Over the last 4.5 years, he has provided the visionary leadership that has overseen the development of both ArDrive and Ario. Before this venture, Phil was with KPMG as an associate director, working as a business solution architect, and prior to that, worked at SharePoint Architecture and as an administration team lead. With nearly 2 decades of experience under his belt, it is evident that Phil has always been a builder and a problem solver in various domains, but now focused on scaling Web3 over the last half decade. Phil, welcome to DecentraLounge. Why don't we start off by discussing your background as an all-around builder and what led you to the transition of the Web3 industry when you founded PDS?
Hey, Ryan, great to be here. Great question. I guess, looking back the last 2 decades, whatever, of working in IT and doing technology, I've always been a builder and a problem solver. I love technology, but it's always been, for me, a means to solve a problem or help people collaborate, as my career was mostly around that. I worked for KPMG. I was building big systems on-prem, in the cloud, using IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, all the ASs, you can name. And it was focused around like collaboration, document management, and some complete custom solutions as well. And I think it was in 2017 or so is when I saw the Microsoft and Ethereum Alliance Foundation, something or other, caught my eye. And I, previously heard about Bitcoin and, was maybe a little bit familiar. Like I'd heard the word blockchain, but I had never, gone into it. But I saw this Microsoft news article, and again, very focused in enterprise IT, and was very much aligned with, Microsoft and a lot of the things that they were doing at the time. Caught my eye. It's like, okay, Ethereum, maybe this is, the real deal. Saw that it was this world computer. And that really struck me. I was like, wow. So like people can take part and provide their own compute resources into something. It's not just about, again, at the time all I knew a little bit was Bitcoin and mining with ASICs, and that just didn't exactly click with me, some of the financial needs of that. But this world computer, like, I don't know, just really struck a nerve, a curiosity, and I started going down kind of that mining rabbit hole, right? Because my background was, more in infrastructure and, systems design. And I was like, hey, let's build a miner. And I bought a bunch of GPUs, 1080 Ti, whatever, at the time. I think I had 7 or 8, in this rack. And I had no clue it was going to be really hot and noisy and tough to manage. And it was super exciting. And I, went down this rabbit hole of, discovering all the things about blockchain and, open permissions networks and the power that they could provide, whether it's for financial applications or beyond, right? And I guess part of that journey, I was like, okay, this is cool, but I really couldn't use what I built. Like this server, like I was just kind of mining stuff and it was really hot, right? Making a lot of noise. And I was doing more research, and I had, discovered Arweave kind of in early 2018. It's being a decentralized storage network where you can upload something and there's no subscriptions to pay for it. You just kind of pay one time to store something forever, right? And that immediately struck me, given that I've done a ton with, storing data at large scales, and it was all, subscription based. So the fact that this was so fundamentally different struck me, and, I went really deep, really quick, started, building Arweave miners and playing around with it, started writing code again. My background originally in college was computer science, but I never really wrote any code. I've written more lines of code, since becoming a founder than, I ever could have imagined. But once I found something that was really usable, the idea really hooked me. And it wasn't until 2020 where, at that point I was very deep in the Arweave community. I had participated in an Arweave focused DAO. There was coronavirus kind of really starting to take effect across the world, and more people working remotely. And I was like, hey, let's kind of go let's become an entrepreneur. And I started with ArDrive, and really never looked back. I could keep going and get into RIOs. Am I good on time?
Good. I do want to preface something so that you can keep going. For starters, before I do that, I love the background. I love all the guitars. I love one of my favorite things about Web3 is when I get on calls with people, it's more fun. When I was a banker, it was just like bleh, all the time. Everybody was so serious. So appreciate that. But to readjust and reflect here, a lot of our listeners are institutions. So we're talking about family offices, hedge funds, VCs, and not all of them are crypto native. So one thing that you just mentioned there is a lot of these people are familiar with Web2 Dropbox. So when we say storage systems, anybody that's listening, just think of like Dropbox, and then decentralized would be, it's not just Dropbox that manages it, it's a shared peer network. So one thing I want you to kind of elaborate on a little bit further is what specifically RIO's network is, what's ArDrive, and how does that help in this scenario? Because you mentioned, okay, with Dropbox, I pay a subscription, but one thing you loved about Arweave, everybody keep in mind here, think of that like Dropbox, you pay a one-time fee and then it just sits there forever. So what is it that what you guys built complements that, and how can an active user use it today?
Yeah, so you think about it, ArDrive is an application. So we started with building an app like Dropbox that stored data on Arweave, this decentralized storage platform. It's like a hard drive that's spread around the world, and there's an incentive for people to continually replicate that data and spread those chunks around. That's a more technical term, but spread the data around the world and ensure it's cryptographically secure via some of the Arweave protocol mechanisms that exist. That's just a hard drive. When you think about your computer, there's other parts to it. When you think of a modern web application like ArDrive, it needs more than just storing data. It obviously has to access it. In ArDrive's case, it has to find the data. It needs an index. It has to be able to query that index. And maybe after we started ArDrive, we realized just discovering this data, everything is a transaction ID, everything's a hash. Just discovering the data on Arweave was a problem, and remembering where it is. So this concept of having a domain name system on top of it was also born. So if Arweave is just this hard drive, and I think Ryan, you introduced the RIO network as this permanent cloud network. That's really what we built. We've built this network of services that add all this rich capability on top of the hard drive, right? The primitive, data storage piece. And that is, again, things like a cache for really fast access, an index that you developers, apps, whatever, can query and return that information back, a domain name system, a way to host full web applications like ArDrive. So the app itself is stored immutably and spread across the world, and can't ever be changed. So yeah, the RIO network is kind of adding this layer of services on top of Arweave, which is the hard drive that's hyper incentivized to store and replicate data. Did that maybe make?
Yeah, I think that's perfect. That helped answer that question. Awesome, appreciate it.
We took that journey to get there. Yeah, over like a couple of years, realizing, okay, I wanted to start with an app like ArDrive, easy to explain and easy to bridge over someone who doesn't know anything about crypto, right? ArDrive, we create a wallet in the background for you. You can pay with a credit card. You drag and drop stuff. I mean, it's super easy to use. My mom uses it, and she is not, Web3. I would even say Web 2.5. So it's like, we started with that. And then realized, we needed these other kinds of cloud services to also be as decentralized as the hard drive that ArDrive was using. So that's how we kind of got to, the RIO piece.
That's what I was going to ask too, because you kind of alluded to with the story of your mom. Like, who are the principal people that you find often using this service, right? Because this is, as you put it, sort of the Web 2.5, where you've clearly thought about the design of trying to make it accessible and, abstracting away a lot of the things that we associate with pain points or friction when it comes to just blockchain technology in general, or any distributed system, right? Because I know it's not like a blockchain in the traditional sense, but like, when it comes to the people who are already building on this, and we know that, for instance, the base layer of data that's, that Arweave has built is continually expanding, and it just keeps getting added to and bigger and bigger and bigger. So I guess, like, who are the people who you're targeting in terms of actually building on top through Ario itself? And then how has the expansion of that network, is it a good thing, a bad thing? Is it difficult for builders to keep up with it, for your team?
Yeah.
It's kind of all of that, I guess I'm curious about.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, and because Arweave is storage, and because how I just explained Ario, this permanent cloud network of services, like, sure, it's really powerful, but these aren't really sexy kind of topics, and they're really broad. They can apply to a lot of different things, right? Every business uses digital storage, right? And every business will need to access that after. So if we look at it from maybe an ArDrive perspective, again, that's where we started. ArDrive is, kind of this general purpose file storage, Web3 file storage app that you can also use as a publishing platform for your decentralized sites and apps. And back from the start, I kind of had four main audiences in mind. One is, your more technical developer. Maybe you're, uploading NFTs or decentralized apps or specific kinds of content that is getting linked to other assets on other blockchains. And that's been a big use case of ArDrive and Arweave for a long time, for years, right? Storing, for example, NFT information immutably, and then having your token on Ethereum. So NFTs has always been, an audience, and a group that we try to cater to. ArDrive is still just a general purpose retail app, so just storing files, right? Like, I use it for personal private data. We see people storing books and music, and I mean, someone actually stored some PDFs that they then had put on a rocket that's currently sent in outer space going to the moon or something. So people are using it for all kinds of creative ways just to store files. If we look at it, outside of ArDrive, which is just one app, we're seeing, especially maybe the last, 8 to 12 months, a lot of AI use cases kind of flourishing, whether that's storing the LLMs themselves on Arweave, accessible through Ario, indexable by Ario, nameable by Ario, is a big use case. Those LLMs are then getting consumed in different ways, whether off-chain or by other decentralized systems like AO, which is this whole other exciting platform that's coming out soon. So artificial intelligence developers are realizing that long-term immutable storage is great for not just the models, but the synthetic data or the real data, right? Talking about this huge data lake that's just continuing to grow. I think that's maybe something that hasn't really been tapped yet. I don't know if there's anyone just scanning Arweave looking for this information and the relationships between them. But that use is only going to get bigger and bigger. And then, Arweave, again, has acted like this base layer for other blockchains. So there's a lot of Oracle platforms and archiving platforms that are taking data from other chains and settling it on Arweave, because those other chains, maybe they have a pruning mechanism, or there's some they're lacking a way to safely back up that long tail of data. So there's been a lot of use cases ranging from like kind of retail to more topical like AI, and I guess it does make it a little bit more challenging for the team to keep up with all of them and really find the best one to focus on,
Yeah, that sounds like a huge undertaking and task. You mentioned very briefly the notion of putting both public and private documents on there. So as someone who may be an end user, do they have the ability to choose whether or not to make things public or private and keep them somewhat encrypted so that prying eyes, if you will, can't see it?
Yeah, so by default, the Arweave network and the RIO network, for that matter, these are public systems, right? So any data that needs to be protected has to be encrypted first and then uploaded. Given that it's a permanent information storage system, anything that is encrypted, you can't change that encryption after the fact. So it does place some unique requirements around systems or apps like ArDrive that do encrypted uploads. Just basically have to make sure you're using really strong encryption. ArDrive uses AES 256. You bring your own key into ArDrive so nobody else knows the password to that encrypted data, or a private drive in ArDrive speak, which also places more responsibility on the user. I made the reference to my mom before being a user of ArDrive. It's maybe harder for someone like that to keep track of one password now for your encrypted data that you can't change. If you lose that password, just like if you lose your crypto wallet, right? Like, it's not recoverable. We made the decision for ArDrive, and I know this now goes to a choice any application or platform can make, but we made the decision we do not want to custody anyone's keys, whether it's a wallet or a key to private information. But there's certainly, ways to build custodial solutions for private data where it's immutably stored, but maybe you're trusting someone to keep those keys nice and safe. Because again, once it's leaked, you can't rotate the key for the data itself. It's really interesting, and something that just requires a little bit more thought from developers looking to integrate with private data.
Wow, that's pretty interesting and impressive. I mean, thinking about where we are today, like you brought up the use of AI, for instance, and just sort of how that is changing a lot of things in our industry, right? We're seeing AI and crypto kind of merge in some ways. And thinking, obviously, as a builder, as someone who's always been, architecting solutions for problems that maybe either already exist now, but you also seem very prescient and kind of thinking about the things that are going to be future problems. Where do you see this going? Like, specifically both for RAO and, ArDrive and what you guys are doing, what you're working on, like how is AO going to impact this, right? Because of it being sort of like a hyper parallelized supercomputer that's being built on top of Arweave, or even just broadly speaking, the trends or the growing data lake, that you referenced before. I mean, it's only going to continue to get big. It made me think of one of my favorite quotes, somebody who said that the longer the shore of mystery, the deeper the sea of knowledge, right? Like it's just bigger and bigger, the more that lake expands over time. So kind of curious as to your thoughts about the future and what this entails for your project, for PDS, and what you guys are working on.
It's something that I've been thinking about a lot, right? Because AI is definitely such a hot topic. It's impacted me personally with how I work, and I'm sure everyone has used ChatGPT, and they're great tools, and it's only going to go beyond being just a tool and get embedded in our lives more and more, and who knows where it goes. I see what we're building as being kind of the foundation for this potential world, where AI is deeply ingrained in everything, and it's producing content at an even more rapid pace, and we're not sure what's real or fake, and information loss only becomes more and more damaging. So I think immutable long-term storage with the incentives like Arweave has is just a critical building block for anything that is going to involve AI decision making, or any content that really wants a rich set of tags and licensing information for it to then be scanned by AI, that can always and have this provenance going back to the person or agent that created or uploaded the content. We don't have that on the internet today, and that's really what we're trying to build, right? And I see that affecting me personally with my data that I'm uploading to Arweave. I know it's through ArDrive. I know it's private now. Maybe it is public, and I make it scannable by AIs in the future, and they could use my likeness or something, or because I'm contributing to this growing data lake, I think it does become, a resource for humanity in like the longer term future. Right now, this maybe goes to some of the vision that we've kind of written up around RIO. I highly recommend any listener checks that out. I think we have a link right from the AR.io page. But yeah, it talks about kind of the biggest goals for the network, and a lot of that has to do with storing history in an unalterable way, right? And the benefits of that. So
well, I absolutely love what Arweave's been building over the last several years, what you guys are building at AR.io. To your point, like, we have no idea what's going to happen when AI truly takes over our lives. And it's not a negative thing to say that. Like, to your point, it's going to be wildly helpful. And we need to make sure that these AIs have access to data that is decentralized, that cannot be kind of messed with in really any way. So what you guys are doing is fantastic. We appreciate that. Before I kind of give you a platform to kind of talk about all the links and how people can reach out to you, just had a quick question. I love the shirt, the Vitalik Buterin. Can you kind of walk us through like what is going on there with the AR.io like logo tattoo on his head?
I might have worn a different shirt if I had realized the audience was a little more institutional, but I think this was like a one of one or one of two that we made for a conference, and I think the goal was to maybe wear it by him and try to get his attention or something. I don't know. One of the guys on our team made it, and then I ended up getting to have it. So
no, I absolutely love it.
My wife hates it.
Institutions that are watching, they know who Vitalik is, of course. And they love it. So that brings me to the people that are listening that want to reach out to you, that want to learn more about R.io. How can they actually start utilizing the platform? If they want to speak to you personally or your team members, what's the best way for people to kind of connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways to connect. My DMs are always open if there's anyone really interested in talking about partnerships, integrations, anything on any level. Obviously, we have a Discord group that you can join to engage in our teams. Ultimately, I would say go to AR.io. Lots of information there, including a get started in the top right. And that's just our way of trying to get you through all the different parts of the ecosystem, the permaweb, whether that's guiding you to apps that are easy to use like ArDrive, or helping you deploy your first site or get a name in the Arweave name system, or many other things. There's go to the get started on the site for that. Follow us on Twitter too. I think it's AR_IO_network. And yeah, now's the time to pay attention, because I forget which milestone exactly. We have our roadmap to mainnet with maybe 5 or 6 milestones on it, and we're at the very end, right? We just released our airdrop registration site. I think it was last week. So if you're listening, if you have used Arweave or ArDrive or AO for that matter, you probably can make a claim for our airdrop registration, which is at airdrop.ar.io. So check that out. If not, still follow us. We have a lot of news coming. We'll be at ETH Denver this year too at the end of February. So if anyone is around, would love to say hi. The rest of a lot of other people in the Arweave ecosystem will be there too. So it should be a really good time. And yeah, would love to talk about any other ideas you might have with a permanent cloud network, whether it relates to AI and beyond.
Awesome. Thanks, Phil. And for those of you that are listening, we'll make sure all those links are in the description below, so you can go on ahead and click them and immediately start interacting. But again, Phil, thanks so much for your time today. We really appreciate you coming on and kind of sharing what you guys are building. And for those of you that are listening, we'll catch you next time on DecentraLounge. See you guys.
Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, guys.